Wait, hang on, wait. Ah! Kind of like I got a set. Paid for this. I don't know if it's any good. Anyway, this is Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man is a manga by Tatsuki Fujimoto. Tatsuki Fujimoto is a rising star in the world of manga writing, manga art. He's increasingly everywhere. And at the time of recording, his manga, Chainsaw Man, is about to be made into probably the next big shonen anime. Shonen anime has been evolving over the last few years. If you look at something like My Hero Academia, this is something that follows all of the tropes of shonen. It rings true of tropes and themes that come from Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Bleach, One Piece. It follows those tropes while also being influenced by Western comics. And if you read the My Hero Academia manga, that influence is even more strikingly apparent, especially if you grew up as a comic book reader like I did. But My Hero Academia still follows the traditions of what came before it. However, manga and anime like Jujutsu Kaisen, The Promised Neverland, and even Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, these are different. These are darker. These have blood and gore and death in a far more visceral way than a lot of manga of the past did. Manga is no longer afraid of being visceral, of being raw, of being dark and twisted. There are so many horror elements present in shonen manga and shonen anime today. Jeff Thu at Mother's Basement did a great video on this, and it's something that I've been noticing as well. And with Chainsaw Man set to be the next big shonen anime, I hope, it's only carrying on that trend. The creator of Chainsaw Man, Tatsuki Fujimoto, has taken over the manga world, at least in terms of the shonen space, and for good reason. He has two series, one that is currently finished, which is Fire Punch, which is collected into 8 volumes, and you can buy and read them all now, it's done. And he has Chainsaw Man, which is an ongoing series soon to be made into probably the next big anime, and we're going to talk about both of them. Fire Punch is a pretty terrifying series. Fire Punch was first published in the Shonen Jump Plus website, so by that definition it is shonen, but also they publish a lot of stuff that is definitely not shonen, a lot of seinen stuff, and this fits into that category a little bit more. So Fire Punch is a post-apocalyptic story, and if you've ever read the Walking Dead comics or watched the Walking Dead show, the kind of raw, gritty, terrifying shock value that you get from that is present in this as well. Sometimes it's effective, and sometimes it really isn't. But Fire Punch still has merit. It's gritty and dark and twisted in a fun and satisfying way, but also in very much a not fun and satisfying way. There are certainly moments in this where you kind of feel like it's gratuitous, and I've gone back and forth on whether or not I actually like the series and want to keep going with it. Fire Punch is set in a snowy post-apocalypse. If you're a big manga reader, then you'll be familiar with Fist of the North Star. If you've read Cormac McCarthy's The Road, or as I said, The Walking Dead, then you're going to know the kind of raw and desolate post-apocalypse that we're talking about here. But Fire Punch does something different, in that it adds a flair of the supernatural and the magical. In the world of Fire Punch, there are people called blessed, or blessed maybe. And these blessed people each have powers, a la the X-Men. And those powers usually manifest in something that their body can do, something their body can create or control: fire, ice, metal. And our protagonist is a young man called Igni. Igni and his sister Luna live in a small village, and this world is completely covered in snow because one of the blessed that I mentioned is someone who is just called the Ice Witch. She covered the world in snow, and so now we live in this post-apocalyptic world where there is barely anything living because it's just ice and snow and desolate, snowy white wastelands, and that lends itself really well to manga being in black and white. Igni and Luna live in a small village. They are the food source for this village because the two of them have the power to regenerate, and so every single day Igni cuts off his limbs and offers those limbs to all the other people in the village as food, and then his limbs grow back within seconds. He feels the pain of losing these limbs. There is no dullness to his pain, so pretty stoic to be able to do something like this. He cuts off his limbs and then they regrow, and then he visits each neighbor with a basket of his limbs. It's dark and it's how the book begins. Now, I'm not going to tell you anything beyond the first chapter. The first volume deals with, I think it's about 7 or 8 chapters, and the first chapter is a beefy one that pretty much gives you a sense of what you're going to expect going in, and a lot of it is so dark. Case in point, the Lim meeting. Shortly after we establish this, something really gratuitous happens that feels entirely unnecessary, which is that we've just met Igni and Luna. They're in bed together because they live in a small cabin, and Luna leans over and asks Igni to make a baby with her because they are the only 2 young people left. I don't know why this incest was added into the story, and I feel like this is a great example of the shock value being worthless. The cutting off limbs thing, feeding people your own arms and legs if you have an endless supply of meat, and people cannibalizing you is actually a really fun concept to explore because it brings up ethics and morals when it comes to cannibalism. That's fun to think about. The incest is a great example of it just being gratuitous for the sake of it, and I did not enjoy it. Now, shortly after this, we never see where that train of thought might have gone because Luna presumably dies after a military group from a town invades the village and is just going to take all of their stuff, take all of their food. But as soon as they realize that this is a town full of cannibals, they abandon the town, but not before the leader of this group destroys the entire town because he's a blessed as well and he has the power of flame. Luna dies, at least Igni thinks she does, while Igni lies on the ground, engulfed in flame for literally years. Now this feels very YA fantasy, something that's a little bit ridiculous, but it's still kind of fun. The idea that Igni was literally lying on the ground for years, growing older while he's rolling around on fire and eventually finds the willpower to kind of control the flames and deal with the pain and eventually stands up and starts walking. And from there we have his adventure. It is a journey of revenge. And this journey of revenge feels pretty similar to something like Demon Slayer. It feels pretty similar to something like The Road, in the sense that it is someone journeying across a landscape and we're getting to meet other people along the way. And it's kind of like, now that I think about it, Stephen King's Gunslinger. Someone who is chasing someone else in a kind of revenge story. Both of those people are magical and powerful, and it's a post-apocalyptic landscape. I actually didn't realize how similar it is to The Gunslinger until I pointed that out. So that's Fire Punch. Now, I've read the first volume. There are things I like and things I don't. Years after watching it, I'm still reeling from the bit where, what's his name? Sam and Dean's dad from Supernatural kills Steve Yeun and beats him over the head, and that was a horrible moment in The Walking Dead that pretty much got me to stop watching it because I couldn't deal with that level of gratuitous violence. It really felt gratuitous. And so that was a bit of a struggle for me, and there's a lot of that in this. There's a lot of gratuitous sexual violence, or even just implied sexual violence, that seems maybe realistic in terms of a post-apocalypse, does not mean it's necessary for a narrative, for a story. That is not the purpose of a story, to shock us or show us something that might be true if it was real. And so to that extent, I don't think it succeeds. What does succeed from beginning to end, however, is Chainsaw Man. Now, as I said, this is Tatsuki Fujimoto's second series. It is still ongoing at the time of recording, and it's going to soon be made into an anime, and I cannot wait to see it. This is where he shines. This is it. Now, if you don't want to read Fire Punch, I do not blame you. If you do want to read Chainsaw Man, great, do it. It is fantastic. This is fun. Now, you can see from Fire Punch and from this that Tatsuki Fujimoto really likes his gratuitous energy, his gratuitous violence. It's camp, it's over the top, it's ridiculous, it's hyperbolic, and that's awesome in Chainsaw Man. In that series, he really nails what he's trying to accomplish. Chainsaw Man is set in a subtly different version of our Japan, our modern day Tokyo, and the way that it's different isn't entirely clear from the beginning, apart from the fact that it is a world that we share with devils. They're called devils in the series rather than demons or ogres or oni or anything like that. Go with it. They're called devils, and these devils are what immediately sets this world apart from our own, and our protagonist is a young man called Denji. Denji works as a devil hunter in order to make money to pay off the Yakuza to whom he is in debt. He's in debt because of his father, and he is pretty much paying off the debts of his father, which is As far as I remember, very similar to Bane in the Batman comics, someone who is shackled undeservedly to debt and crime and the underworld, not through his own means or his own choices. And this immediately makes Denji a pretty sympathetic character. What also makes him sympathetic is the fact that Denji is a young man who didn't get to go to school, he didn't get a normal life, and he didn't get any friends or any good opportunities because of the shackles that are around him. Now, Denji has been working as a devil hunter, he does other things to try to make money to pay off these debts, but the debts are still there and they are crushing him. He lives in a little shack, and in this shack is also a dog. His dog, Pochita. Pochita is a little chainsaw devil. It's an adorable design, this little dog. Pochita is this little devil dog who is also a chainsaw, and Denji pulls on this dog's tail, and this chainsaw that sticks out of the dog's face starts to work and move as a chainsaw, and he uses it as his weapon to cut down these devils. Very, very early on in the first chapter, Denji is betrayed by the Yakuza when he is killed and torn to pieces and thrown in a dumpster with his dog Pochita. Pochita suddenly merges and bonds with Denji's body, and now he has two hearts beating in his chest and the power of his devil dog. So now Denji is Chainsaw Man. His arms and his head become chainsaw blades. His head becomes a kind of chainsaw engine with a big blade sticking out of it. It is gorgeous. It is ridiculous. It is a beautiful design. And as I've said, Fire Punch, not sure I'm going to stick with it. Not sure it sold itself to me very well, but Chainsaw Man is so much fun. It is camp and silly and ridiculous, and it knows that. It owns it completely. It knows exactly what it is, and it is proud of what it is. Look at it. Chainsaw Man knows exactly what it's doing. It is a gorgeous piece of artwork. It is a ridiculous story with a lovable protagonist. I say lovable, there are a lot of tropes in manga and anime that I don't like, most of which are what they call fan service. It has a lot of fan service, and that fan service is awkward. Denji has this obsession with wanting to touch boobs, and I don't care for this kind of fan service in manga and anime. It's tired, it's lazy, and I'm not really sure who it's for, certainly not for me. I don't care about Denji's silly little goals. I care about Denji as a person. I want to see him grow and change. Anyway, I don't like fan service. Apart from that, Denji is a very lovable young man. Yeah, he's uneducated, but sweet. And there is enough about him that is appealing and enough room for him to grow that keeps you pushing on with the story. But I have to admit, so far, just with the first volume, the story isn't as exciting as the events within it. This is the kind of story that so far really stands on the merit of its action and the way that it's drawn. Tatsuki Fujimoto has an impossible to describe art style. It is raw while also being very, very precise. He knows exactly how to draw a scenario, draw a character, draw an action moment that is beautifully choreographed. A manga artist, a comic book artist, is a choreographer, a set designer, a costume designer. They have to do everything. They have to think about the shot composition. They have to think about the camera angle. There is no camera as such, but they have to think about how that camera moves around the setting. You get this. And he is so good at this, and there is a rawness to it in the sense that it's blurry and messy, while at the same time being completely and perfectly controlled. He knows that at no point is anything misconstrued, is anything unclear. It's crisp and it's clean, while also feeling like it's being scribbled, and that goes for the actual lines themselves within the artwork. It's beautiful in its chaos. It's gorgeous. I don't know quite how he manages to have this kind of messy, scribbling, scrawling, thick, black approach to his artwork while also being completely clear and concise and crisp and pure. It's really amazing. There are two styles of artwork at play within every single panel that really shouldn't ever go together. These are two separate styles of art that he manages to incorporate into his work so well. I really don't know how he manages it, and I love it to pieces. So what you have here is a protagonist who is fun with enough room to grow. You have art that really carries the momentum and depicts an endless wave of fantastic combat scenes and action scenes from beginning to end. And you have a world that is mysteriously different enough from our own to make it intriguing, and characters who are drip-fed to you bit by bit, who each stand well enough on their own for you to be invested in where they're going to go next. Chainsaw Man does everything well. I think that this represents the next step in shonen manga, in the sense that it is following these horror tropes of things like The Promised Neverland, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, of being bloody and raw and unashamedly chaotic and aggressive and pretty dark and horror infused. But it also excitedly plays on something that has been sorely lacking in comics and manga, which is camp. I grew up reading DC comics because I like camp, and DC is way more camp than Marvel is, at least in the comics. DC films haven't been good for a long time, for the most part. Shazam was good, because they try to be dark and gritty, and Zack Snyder ruined everything. But when DC is at its best, it is camp and silly and fun. And it knows that, and it leans into that really beautifully. And Chainsaw Man is exactly that. He could be one of Batman's or the Flash's villains. He fits into that rogues gallery so perfectly. Fortunately, he is a manga protagonist, and he is the person whose story we are going to be following all the way through, and I can't wait to see where it goes. Chainsaw Man is incredible fun. It is campy and it is silly, and I love so much about the way that it's drawn and the characters and the story, and the fact that the world is slowly unraveling and blossoming in front of us, and you start to see in panels and in pages, in passing comments, little things that tell you, oh, this is not the world that we're familiar with, devils aside. And that makes it a really exciting world to slowly fall into as you go. This is a flawless manga. This is not so much. I don't blame anyone for not sticking with this, but I also don't blame anyone for absolutely loving it. You know, it's a 50-50, take it or leave it, I like things and I don't like things kind of a situation. This is fantastic. This is so much fun. And I guess that's the reason why this is the one being made into an anime. This is the one with a bright future ahead of it. Chainsaw Man is the manga to read right now if you like shonen, if you like horror, if you like camp and silliness, if you like action that is beautifully, beautifully drawn, and fantastic character design and character writing. Fire Punch, if you've read it and you liked it, and you think it gets better from here, please let me know, because I will carry it on if enough people can convince me to. No one needs to convince me to read Chainsaw Man. I am sold, and you should be too. All right. Subscribe for books.